My name is Annabelle Thompson, and I am 28 years old. 4 weeks ago, my parents did something so calculated, so heartless, that even now, saying it out loud makes my throat close. They sold my grandmother's 1892 Steinway piano, the one treasure she promised would be mine since I was 7, and used the entire $95,000 to buy my younger sister, Megan, a brand new white Mercedes-Benz. They told everyone it was an upgrade for her future, but the truth was uglier. They didn't believe Grandma would live long enough to notice, and they didn't believe I would dare tell her. They were wrong, terribly wrong. The story really began the afternoon Grandma was admitted to hospice. I still remember the call, my father's voice cold and clipped, saying, "Your grandmother had another heart attack. They're moving her to hospice. Family meeting, 1 hour." No comfort, no softness, just his usual command. When I arrived at the hospital, they were already there. My father, Richard, stiff as a statue, my mother, Diane, clutching her designer purse like a trophy, and Megan scrolling her phone like she was bored at a cafe. My father looked at me the way he always did, like I was a burden. "You'll handle the daily visits," he said. "We're busy. Megan has important obligations with the Harrison family." Important meant impressing her wealthy boyfriend's parents. My life, my career, my time, none of it mattered. I walked toward Grandma's room and heard my mother whisper, "At least she's useful for something." Their voices didn't even sting anymore. It was a familiar ache, the kind I had carried since childhood, always being the one who worked, who cared, who showed up, but rarely the one valued. Grandma's room smelled of lavender and old books, her insistence, not the hospital. She hated antiseptic smells. "If I'm going to die," she told me, "I'll die surrounded by the things I love." She was frail, but her mind was sharp. She asked about my students, about music, about life. And one evening, she took my hand and said, "The piano is yours. I already told them. Don't let them bully you out of what is rightfully yours." I promised her. I meant it. 2 weeks later, on a rainy afternoon, everything shattered. Grandma wanted old photographs from her house. I still had a key, so I went straight after school. When I walked into the living room, my heart stopped. The Steinway was gone, not moved, not covered. Gone. Only a pale rectangle in the carpet remained, like a body outline in a crime scene. I called my mother. She answered casually. "Your father handled it. Don't worry about adult matters." Adult matters. My blood boiled. When I demanded answers, she hung up. I drove to my parents' house with shaking hands. My father opened the door, drink in hand, completely unbothered. "We sold it," he said. "Got 95 grand. Megan needed a good car." Megan bounced into the foyer, dangling her new keys like jewelry. "Don't be jealous, Anna," she smirked. "You can't drive a piano." I stared at all three of them, my parents and my sister, and realized I had never been part of their world. I existed in the margins, only useful when they needed me quiet, obedient, or invisible. "Does Grandma know?" I asked, silence. "Does she know you sold her piano?" My mother stepped forward, ice in her voice. "You will not tell her. If something happens to her, it will be your fault. Do you want to kill your grandmother?" They wanted me silent, guilty, alone, but something inside me refused to shrink this time. "She has a right to the truth," I whispered, and I left before they could stop me. That night I didn't sleep. I sat staring at a photograph of Grandma at her final performance, her hands poised over the keys of the same piano they had gutted from her home. I kept hearing her voice, lies wound deeper. My mother's voice twisted with venom. "You'll be responsible for killing her." But then, as dawn crept in, I knew silence would make me an accomplice, and I refused. The next morning I went to hospice. Grandma looked frail, but her eyes sharpened as I entered. "You look troubled," she said. I told her everything, every detail, every lie, every threat. I braced for heartbreak, for shock. Instead, she sighed, not in pain, but in confirmation. "I knew Richard might do this," she said calmly. "I know my son. I hoped he would not betray me again, but I prepared for the possibility." "Prepared how?" I whispered. She reached for her phone, scrolled, pressed one contact, put it on speaker. A man answered. "Eleanor, do you need something?" "I'm dying, Harold, but I'm not blind. It's time." He paused only a moment. "Sunday." "Yes," she said. "Diane's birthday party at my house." He replied, "I'll prepare everything." Grandma hung up, then turned to me with a knowing smile. "Justice is slow, Annabelle, but it arrives." I didn't understand. Not fully. Not yet. But that Sunday, that one day, would destroy everything my parents believed they controlled. 3 days later, I met with Harold Jennings, her attorney. His office smelled like parchment and old leather. He slid a folder across the desk and said, "Your grandmother told me to show you this before Sunday." When I opened the folder, my breath left my body. My parents didn't own the house they lived in. They never had. The deed was still in Grandma's name, secretly protected for years. Harold said, "Your grandmother let them believe it was theirs so she could see their character." I thought back to every insult, every command, every time they bragged about their home. They built their pride on a lie. And Sunday's party. It was being held in a house they didn't own. In front of their friends, business partners, the Harrisons, everyone they wanted to impress. Grandma had been planning something for 5 years, and now the clock was running out. Sunday morning, she called me again, her voice weak but steady. "Wear something strong," she whispered. "Stand beside me, and remember you are not the villain in this story. You never were." I arrived at the party in a navy dress, hair pinned, heart pounding. The house was filled with people. Laughter, wine glasses, Megan flaunting her car keys, my father boasting, my mother glowing with false pride. Then I saw him, Harold, sitting quietly in the corner, leather briefcase beside him. He nodded once. The moment had arrived. And what happened next changed everything. I stood outside Grandma's hospice room with my heart pounding so hard I thought the nurses could hear it. My hands were cold, my throat tight, and for a moment I wondered if I should even tell her. Maybe silence would be kinder. Maybe letting her believe that the piano was safe would spare her the shock. But then I remembered her voice from childhood, steady, wise, unshakable. "Annabelle, truth is painful only to those who try to hide it." So I walked in. Grandma's eyes opened slowly, but the moment she saw me, warmth flooded her face, even in her frail state. She lifted her hand toward me. I held it gently, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "You look worried, my child," she whispered. "Tell me." I didn't want to break her heart. I didn't want to add sorrow to her suffering. But the words pushed out of me like a tide I could no longer hold back. "Grandma, they sold your piano." Her hand froze in mine. For a long 5 seconds, she simply stared at me, not confused, not shocked, but deeply, painfully disappointed. She closed her eyes and pressed her lips together, as if swallowing a scream. "Who?" she asked, voice trembling. "Mom and Dad," I whispered. "They sold it for $95,000. They bought Lily a new Mercedes. Grandma pulled her hand away from mine. Her frail body shook with anger. Not loud anger, the quiet kind that carries history. She turned her face toward the window. A tear slid down her cheek. "That piano carried every memory of our family," she said softly. "Your grandfather proposed to me sitting on its bench. I taught your mother her first lullaby on it. And you, Annabelle, you were the only one who understood its soul." I felt tears burning in my eyes. "I wanted to protect it," I choked out. "But they lied to me, Grandma. They told me they were only cleaning it. They told me." She raised her hand, silencing me. "Do you know where it is now?" I shook my head. "Not yet, but I will find out." Grandma nodded slowly, then reached under her pillow with effort. She pulled out a small velvet pouch and pressed it into my hand. Inside was a folded piece of yellowed paper. "What is this?" I asked. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "A legal document your grandfather and I signed years ago. A will that your mother never knew existed. It names you as the sole inheritor of the piano and everything associated with it." My breath caught. I unfolded the paper. There it was, a notarized will, signed and sealed, declaring the piano legally mine. Grandma gave me a faint, tired smile. "You were meant to have it. You must restore what was broken, not just the piano, but the truth." I swallowed hard, a mix of fear and determination rising inside me. Grandma, what do you want me to do? She looked directly into my eyes, and even in her frailty, she had the strength of a mountain. Fight legally, calmly, smartly, use this document. Do not let them bully you. Do not let them manipulate the past. You are stronger than they think. I nodded, tears streaming now. She squeezed my hand once more, a final passing of the torch. Annabelle, promise me you will reclaim what is yours. I promise, I whispered. She closed her eyes peacefully. And in that exact moment, something shifted inside me, a fire I didn't know I had. For years, I allowed myself to be the quiet one, the obedient daughter, the one who swallowed unfairness with a forced smile. But not anymore. I left the hospice room with a new spine, straight, steady, unbreakable. I was done being their puppet. I was done watching them erase my history. Now I had legal proof, emotional strength, and a mission. And as I stepped outside into the cold twilight air, I made myself another silent promise. I'm going to expose every lie, no matter how painful it becomes. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. Not after what Grandma told me. Not after seeing the truth in her eyes, the truth they had tried so hard to bury. Instead, I drove straight to my apartment, locked the door, and spread the will out on my kitchen table. I must have read it at least 10 times. Every sentence felt like a lifeline pulling me back to the version of myself I had lost. The Steinway piano shall be inherited solely by my granddaughter, Annabelle Thompson. My hands were trembling, but it wasn't weakness. It was adrenaline, awakening fire. For years, I had been the good daughter, the responsible one, the one who cleaned up every mess Lily created while my parents applauded her for simply existing. They never saw me, they saw my usefulness. But selling Grandma's piano, that was the final betrayal. I took a deep breath and dialed the number of the antique dealer listed on the sale invoice I had photographed earlier. Good evening, a man answered politely. Hi, this is Annabelle Thompson. I believe my family recently sold you a Steinway. He cut me off immediately. Oh yes, the 1892 Steinway Model B. Exquisite condition. But I'm afraid it has already been resold. My grip tightened on the phone. Resold? To who? I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't give out buyer details without legal authorization. I inhaled sharply, my frustration turning into determination. Then you'll be hearing from my attorney. The moment I said the word attorney, something inside me shifted. I wasn't bluffing, I meant it. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to beg or cry or plead for respect. I was going to claim it. The next morning, I went to my parents' house. Not to fight, not to shout, but to face them with clarity. When I walked in, Mom was standing in the kitchen pouring coffee. Dad was reading the newspaper. Lily was scrolling on her phone, her car keys, the car bought with the piano money, dangling from her fingers like a trophy. Mom didn't even look up when she spoke. Oh, look who finally decided to visit. I didn't sit. I didn't smile. I didn't soften myself, the way I always did. Where's the paperwork for the piano sale? I asked plainly. Mom blinked, confused. Dad lowered his newspaper. Lily smirked. Mom finally answered, her voice tight. Why would you need that? Because, I said, pulling the folded document from my bag, the piano was legally mine. The room froze. Mom's face drained of color. Dad's jaw locked. Lily's smirk vanished. I opened the will and placed it gently on the dining table. Dad leaned forward and read it twice, his hands slowly curling into fists. That's impossible, Mom snapped. Mother would never. She did, I said quietly, and you sold something that didn't belong to you. Lily shoved herself into the conversation. Oh, stop being dramatic, Anna. It was just a piano. Just a piano. That single sentence sliced through me. I turned to her, my voice calm but cold. You used the money from something you had no right to touch. That piano was the last piece of Grandma's history, of our family legacy, and you treated it like a down payment on your ego. Lily rolled her eyes. Ugh, here we go again. Dad slammed his hand on the table. The sound echoed through the house. Why didn't Mother tell us? He muttered, anger rising not towards me, but towards the truth he never expected. I met his eyes. Because she knew what you would do. Silence. Mom's expression shifted from shock to defensiveness. Well, she said sharply, the piano is gone and we can't get it back. So what exactly do you want, Annabelle? There it was, the question layered with guilt, fear, and denial. I looked directly at her. I want the buyer's details, and I want the $95,000 returned, legally. Mom's mouth fell open. Returned? Are you insane? I shook my head slowly. No, just finally awake. Lily jumped up from her seat. You're not taking my car. I turned to her with a steady gaze. It was never yours. Dad stepped between us. You're taking this too far. I straightened my posture. Not nearly far enough. I picked up the will from the table and placed it back in my bag. You committed fraud, I said quietly. Property theft, unauthorized sale of an inherited asset. I could file a civil lawsuit. I could file a criminal complaint. But I'm giving you a chance to make this right before I involve lawyers. Mom's voice cracked. You wouldn't do that to your own parents. I looked at her and felt an unexpected calm. You already did it to me. Without another word, I turned and walked out. Their voices echoed behind me my name, shouted in anger, fear, disbelief, but I didn't stop. For the first time in my life, I walked away without looking back. Because I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of them. Not of conflict. Not of standing alone. I had truth on my side. I had legal proof. I had purpose. And as I reached my car and closed the door, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Miss Thompson, we need to speak urgently regarding the piano. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. My heart skipped. This wasn't over. Not even close. I stared at the unknown number on my phone, my heart beat steady but sharp. Something told me this message was not a coincidence. I called back immediately. A calm male voice answered. Miss Thompson, this is attorney Michael Grayson. I represent the private collector who recently purchased your grandmother's Steinway. My breath caught. Do you know where it is now? Yes, he replied, and I believe you should come see it. There is something you need to know. The next morning, I drove 2 hours outside the city to a gated estate. Tall iron gates, wide gravel path, and silence, the kind that hums with secrets. A man in a dark suit greeted me at the door. Miss Thompson, right this way. He led me through a long hallway into a room filled with soft light. And then I saw it. Grandma's piano. Polished, protected, restored. Not stolen, not abandoned, preserved. My knees nearly buckled. I walked toward it slowly, my hand trembling as I touched the smooth ivory keys. Memories hit me like a warm wave. Grandma laughing. Grandma teaching me lullabies. Grandma's fingers dancing on these same keys. A voice spoke behind me. It belongs to you, doesn't it? I turned. A man in his 70s stood at the doorway, gentle-eyed, dignified. He stepped inside slowly, leaning on his cane. I am Richard Hale, he said. I bought this piano because I recognized it. I frowned. Recognized it how? He smiled faintly. Your grandmother was my first piano teacher. More than 50 years ago, I knew her sound anywhere. I knew the instrument she cherished. When I heard it was being sold, I couldn't bear the thought of it falling into careless hands. My eyes burned with tears. He continued softly. I didn't know the sale was unauthorized until my attorney researched the family background. And when we discovered your name in the original ownership record, well, it became clear the piano legally belonged to you. He reached into his coat and handed me a file. Inside was a signed legal declaration. Transfer of ownership, return to rightful heir. I stared at him, speechless. You're giving it back to me. He nodded. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman. She saved me in ways no one saw. Consider this my way of honoring her. And you. My throat closed with emotion. Thank you, I whispered. He smiled gently. Take care of it, she would want that. The next step was inevitable. I returned home with the legal document in my bag and fire in my chest. My parents were sitting in the living room, Lily packing nervously. Mom rushed toward me. Annabelle, we were worried. I raised my hand, stopping her. It's done, I said. I have the piano back, legally. Dad swallowed hard. How who? It doesn't matter, I said calmly. What matters is the truth. I placed the transfer document on the table. You committed fraud, but instead of filing charges, I'm giving you a legal agreement to sign. Mom's face tightened. What kind of agreement? I slid the papers toward her. A formal admission that you sold property that was not yours, and a sworn statement that all remaining proceeds from the sale will be returned to me within 30 days. Lily exploded. You're ruining this family. I looked at her with steady eyes. No, Lily. I'm stopping the cycle of using, lying, and taking advantage of the only person who never fought back. Dad looked ashamed. Mom looked small. Lily looked furious. But I was calm. Sign it, I said, or we go to court. They hesitated, but only for a moment. Because they knew I wasn't bluffing anymore. Mom picked up the pen first. Her hand trembled as she signed. Dad followed, silent and defeated. Lily looked away, arms crossed, unable to face the truth. When they finished, I gathered the documents and stood up. Grandma always said a family is only as strong as its honesty, I said quietly. Maybe now you'll finally understand what she meant. For the first time in my life, they had no answer. 3 days later, Grandma passed away peacefully. I visited her hospice room one last time and placed my hand over hers. I kept the promise, I whispered. And for the first time since this all began, I felt peace. Real peace. Not the peace of avoiding conflict, but the peace of finally choosing myself. Weeks passed. The piano sat in my apartment now, safe, shining, sacred. Sometimes, late at night, I would open the lid and let my fingers glide across the keys. And every note felt like her voice. Justice will always find its way back home. And it did. With clarity. With strength. With truth. And with that, the story finally finds its rightful peace. Truth stood firm and justice prevailed. I would be truly grateful if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is not just a button. It is encouragement, blessing, and strength for me to continue creating meaningful stories for you. Thank you for being here, and may peace and good health always stay with you.